Let me share my screen first. Go back. Share the other screen. Okay, here's my other slide. Sorry, just having to find my screen. Okay, let's, hopefully this one. Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep.
All right. So today is part 8 of the career series. We've done a bunch of different ones. I like to open up with a quote: "Computer science is the operating system for all innovation." This is Steve Ballmer said that, former CEO of Microsoft. Best colleges, if you're thinking of majoring in computer science. Here's a list of the top 10 from US News World Report. This is from their 2023, 2024 report, and they do one annually. Fields of study when you go into computer science. So if you could take a look, there's different areas of computer science, and then what kind of job titles you would get. And here are some: web developer, computer business analyst, video game designer, scientist, cloud engineer, just to name a few, software engineer, software developer. And the bottom is the source where I got this information from. So what do you do to get a job in the computer science field? You want to maybe enroll in a bachelor's degree program first to focus on it. And there's actually 2 different ones. And our speakers can go into there. There's one where you get a MS in, whoops. There's where you get MS in computer science, BS, I'm sorry, BS in computer science, or a BS in information systems. Okay, and then you want to pick the area of computer science that you want to do, and then maybe in order to get a higher level position later on, you want to get MS, which is master's. And there are different certifications in the field of computer science that you want to obtain to boost your credentials. And the speakers, you can ask them, or they could tell you. And then you want to start going to submit your resumes, applying for jobs. Now, who to ask about maybe some questions for college? The Irvington High School counselors. This is the counselor names. Basically, you can ask them maybe what classes you need to take at Irvington to maybe go into computer science, as well as, I believe they're probably the ones you could talk about later on in your junior, senior year when you need your transcripts. What process it is to get those to the colleges you're applying to. Our career specialist at Irvington is Bindu Chopla, and she's the one who organizes a lot of either Zoom meeting or in-person meeting with admissions officers from the different colleges. So if you are interested in computer science and there's a, you know that there's a college with that program there, maybe you could talk to Ms. Chopla about whether she's going to have them, invite them to come to Irvington to talk with you. Speakers today. So we have today on the panel, Matthew Thomas, senior staff software engineer for Google Inc. He has a BS in computer science from Cornell University, has extensive experience in leading teams of engineers on various projects, coding, development skills, managing software systems, and he'll tell you more about what his job entails. We have Pete Mall, who's more of an entrepreneur. You've got a BS and MS in computer engineering from Santa Clara University. He's currently working on a startup company. He's been involved in so many different things. He was one of the core developers of WordPress, co-founded a full-service digital agency that serves clients like Disney and Google. He was a founding developer for Recode.net, which is now called Vox Media because they bought them over. And then he's been also worked with some companies on cryptocurrency. And then we have Simon Wong, consulting director at CGI Inc. BS in Information Systems from New York University's Stern School of Business. And he has had 25 plus years on different management system projects over the past. And the company CGI has worked with the New York City DOITT, and Simon can go into that more detail. The Department of Corrections, the Financial Information Services Agency in New York City, Westchester County, and state of Iowa. And as you see, there's so much New York because Simon is zooming in from New York. So I will now turn over the reins to Matt, and he will start us off first.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Matt Thomas. I work at Google. I'm a software engineer at Google. I've worked there since 2006. It's actually the only job that I've had since college. And yeah, my background is I grew up in Ohio. When I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of like resume of extracurriculars and things like this. I didn't play sports. I was on the math squad, but I had good grades and I had a good SAT, so that got me into Cornell University to study CS, and I saw Cornell was on the list, still on the list of top 10 programs. That's awesome. Highly recommend the program there. I guess what drew me to computer science initially was this was in the relatively earlier days of the internet compared to now. We had gotten internet at home when I was maybe in the 8th or 9th grade, and I was really just amazed by the potential of the technology and what computers are able to do. Just so much being unlocked at that time, and I really liked the idea in particular of programming, that you could like write a simple program once and just have this kind of unlimited array of experiences with it. And just, yeah, the potential of that really drew me in. And I also just really liked, I was always drawn to like math and analytical thinking. So just being able to reason about technical systems in that way. So yeah, I went to Cornell to study computer science. I started undergrad without having ever written a line of code before in a serious programming language. There was no programming class in my high school. So yeah, I came in, I had done a little bit of like simple HTML, which was still already a pretty new thing in those days. But yeah, I came in without programming experience, which kind of set me at a bit of a disadvantage relative to a lot of the class. But yeah, studied hard. I was able to get good marks there. And I did an internship out here in California at the Sandia lab in Livermore, working on cybersecurity. And yeah, when it came time to get to graduate and get into the workforce, interviewing was never really my strong suit. I needed some help from the program at Cornell to kind of get lined up with that original internship. And Cornell also had a really good on-campus recruiting network to connect to various companies. There was one interview in particular, they asked me to bring in a code sample of my own that we could discuss, and I completely missed that in the email. I showed up at the interview without a code sample, but they still, so the recruiter kind of shooed me out for that, but they gave me the interview anyway, and they liked me enough to bring me on site. And yeah, that was how I got connected with the job that I have now at Google, and that's where I've worked ever since. So yeah, at Google, I've had the one job for pretty much my whole career, but I've gotten a range of different experiences there. I've kind of tried to keep the cadence of working on a particular thing for about 4 years at a time. I liked that kind of pattern of, had 4 years in high school, 4 years in college, and then I try to kind of keep that roughly that cadence of teams that I work on. So the first team that I worked on at Google was continuing on the theme from my internship, working on cybersecurity. And there I was working on basically some network security software that protects Google systems against denial of service attacks. That project was super confidential, and so confidential in fact that my manager at the time did not have access to read the code that I was writing. But yeah, it was a really fun project, and part of what made it exciting was working on systems that, like, some of the code we were writing was code that needed to run on every query coming into Google systems, and so it needed to be just super fast. You couldn't spare any microseconds of latency, and also systems that needed to be just like very high uptime, very high availability. And that kind of got me into the space of large scale distributed backend systems, which has kind of been the theme of my career since then. Um, so since that time, I've had an opportunity to work on various Google products. I worked on when social networking was the big thing. I worked on Google Plus. I was the tech lead for the storage layer of Google Plus, and then I went from there to Androids when mobile was the big push. And there I actually managed a team. I was the manager of the team that collects location reports to improve the quality of the blue dot when you open up Google Maps. And then after a few years, I spent about 2.5 years as a manager. After that, went back to an IC role to kind of restore more of a technical focus. And then I worked on Google Assistant. I was one of the leads for the storage layer of that. And about a year ago, I was drafted into the effort for Google Bard, which is the AI chatbot, which is all the buzz now. So that's what I've been working on for the past year or so. And my current role is that I'm one of the engineering leads for the evaluation platform that we use for Google Bard. So when people are adding new data into the model, training new versions of the model to be able to compare the old results against the new and verify that the quality is improving. So in terms of the challenges that I face and the day-to-day work, it has really evolved a lot over the course of my career. I think when I was starting out in a more junior role, it was the challenges were almost entirely on a technical level of figuring out how to write clean code, how to keep things well documented, choose the right libraries to run. I mentioned some of the challenges about like having the code run super fast, things like this. And then kind of as I've grown into more senior roles, the challenges have kind of widened in scope. So on the first team, I was promoted up to senior software engineer, and that role has more to do with kind of overseeing a project that might span over a few quarters and might involve multiple people, and you kind of need to figure out not just like how to put the pieces of code together, but kind of the overall design for what sort of systems you're going to integrate, how the architecture needs to look, what kind of components do you need, figuring out kind of all the bells and whistles that are needed of making sure that the system is well monitored, that it's properly maintainable, that it's well documented, and kind of steering other people in developing systems with those properties. And then going from senior up into staff, and then the senior staff role, which is the role that I have now. Those roles are about kind of more of that coordination at a higher level. So figuring out at the level of overall teams, like where we want to invest our efforts, where are the places where we can refocus priorities, or if there's some really large problem that needs to be solved and we need to figure out what kinds of systems need to exist at a high level, steer the overall strategy, being responsible for execution at a team level, figuring out what are other teams doing in similar space opportunities where we can work together when that's already out there. And so a lot of what I do day to day in my friends into kind of having conversations, communicating offline about some of these strategic issues, kind of steering the direction of projects, reviewing designs, figuring out areas where the strategy maybe needs to be clarified or needs to be refined, coming up with documents about that. But I do still have the opportunity to pretty regularly get my hands dirty in the code, and that's still the thing that I enjoy the most. So yeah, I would say the sorts of challenges and the shape of the day-to-day role really kind of vary a lot, I would say, over the course of your career. In terms of the time commitments, that also I would say varies to some degree. I think when I was starting out in the job was more about heads down coding. I could do that kind of late into the evening, and the culture at that time was also just like the company was when I joined at Google, it was the company as a whole was like less than 10 years old, so it was a lot of new grads and younger folks, and the culture involved more kind of regularly working into the evenings. I would say as I've kind of grown into a more senior role, it's kind of more standard to keep regular business hours, and more of the people who I work with also are people who have family commitments and other things outside of work, and so it's pretty well respected to kind of set boundaries. So I would say I'm typically working in the range of the standard 40 hours, but I know that'll vary a lot from project to project. Right? Some projects are going to be more intense and will ask more of people. There is still a lot of activity that goes on, especially on Google Bard now being such an intense project. There's a lot of activity that goes on after hours, so there's regularly communications coming in. But yeah, in terms of the actual hours that I need to spend focused on the job, it's pretty manageable. And yeah, in terms of advice that I would have for students interested in a career in CS, and again, your mileage may vary. I've only worked for one company, so I only have that one kind of data point to give. But I would say that I would expect, the industry evolves a lot. And a lot of what you may be doing, 10 years into your career may be determined just as much by the trends and the shape of where the industry goes as it is by what you studied initially. So, I work with folks who have degrees in, a lot of them come from kind of the standard CS background. Some have degrees in mathematics or in data science or electrical engineering. And if you asked me to line up like who has a degree in what, I'd be very hard pressed to do that, because a lot of people, they start in one thing, and then kind of as the industry evolves, like, when I came out of college, for example, right, nobody was talking about smartphones, right? That wasn't a thing yet. No one was social networking was in a very early stage. AI was a very different kind of thing from what it is now. And all those things have kind of emerged as trends in the industry. So I guess my advice would be to kind of expect that there will be a lot of evolution and kind of continued growth as you get into industry. And so from that perspective, I would say focusing on kind of the core skills of just like how you pick up new things, how you process information, understanding the foundational concepts is probably more important than like really the specific technologies of the moment, because things will continue to evolve.
Thank you, Matt. That's a lot of information for me to process, because since I'm not a computer science major, you know. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be questions more. I'm going to switch over to Pete. Pete Mall.
Yep. Hey, yeah, my name's Pete, and wow, Matt did a really good job. It's really hard to, follow that up. I was just sitting here like nodding my head to a lot of things he was saying. But one of the beauties of like being in this space is, there's so much you can specialize in. There's so much you can do. You don't have to, be pigeonholed into one spot. As he said, you've like jumped teams, and also there's just so much you can learn on your own and try to like experiment with. So it's, for someone who doesn't want to just be pigeonholed into one thing, it's a really good field. A little background about myself. I grew up in India, a little bit, more interested in sports than anything else at the time. I also ended up moving to England to play soccer there. And ever since I was a kid, I was really into tinkering with things, whether it was electronics. My parents would call it, I was breaking things open, but I was just really trying to see how things work. I'd like routinely be opening up clocks and stuff just to kind of see how things are put together and see if I can, put them back together, which usually couldn't. But that's kind of what, started my passion into like learning how things work. And I always knew I kind of wanted to be an engineer, but I just wasn't sure, what type. I come from a family of both my parents are engineers, and but I was going to be electrical, mechanical, chemical. There's so many things to do, and eventually I ended up having a computer at home, which kind of kickstarted this whole process of self-learning. Pretty early on, I think at the time in school there weren't any computer classes, but I kind of started tinkering with things, started like learning how to code at a young age, and that kind of started my passion. Um, I moved to the U.S. Actually, I started at Ohio State to play soccer. Got injured, moved back to the Bay Area where my parents were, and that's kind of when I decided, okay, I'm really just going to focus on school. I kind of bounced around a little bit. I went to Berkeley for a little bit. Eventually, ended up at Santa Clara, transferring as a junior, and that's where I decided, okay, I'm going to take things seriously. I was in the School of Engineering. Like throughout all this, I still had good grades, so that wasn't an issue for me to be able to move schools or get into a program that was good enough. At Santa Clara, I got my bachelor's and master's. I kind of graduated around the same time as Matt. I think I joined the workforce class of 2005. So I kind of joined the workforce around 2006 once I finished my master's. As opposed to Matt, I was more somebody, who wanted to do things my way, or, stay small and kind of, do things on my own. So that's one of the beauties of, the field, is that you don't necessarily have to work for a big company. You can work for a small company. You can start working for yourself. There's a lot to do. Just have to have a passion for whatever you're working on. I, in college, I think we were tinkering around for a website for a club at school, and that's when I started learning, reading about, web systems, started learning how, sites are built, and found this thing called WordPress, which had just come out at the time. And I started learning a little bit more. And again, it's an open source piece of software, that has since been really successful. I think at one point it covered something like 60 or 70% of all websites that had a content management system attached to it. So basically, it's a piece of code that lets you easily manage what you either create websites or publish a blog, but it's not just a specialized software, but it can do a lot of different things. Kind of like, if you compare to like Squarespace and Wix nowadays. But again, the beauty is you could download this piece of code, you could tinker around with it, you can make changes, and let's see it happen in real time. So that's why I kind of got interested in it. Eventually, I started giving code back because it's an open source software. That means anyone can download, anyone can add code to it, and there's a process where people see, okay, the code looks good, it goes through an evolution process and gets added to it, and everyone has access to it. And that's when I started realizing, okay, there's a market for these things, and I started offering consultancy services around WordPress. And that's when a time when WordPress started being picked up by more and more companies. And eventually, I ended up starting an agency doing web work for small companies. And over time, grew that agency to about 20 people. Ended up working with likes of Disney. Even did some work with Google, at YouTube, Yahoo, some of the other big companies in the space. And throughout this whole time, I think I always spent too much time writing code myself, as opposed to being able to delegate. But I had a really good partner who was able to help me grow the team while I stayed very technical. Eventually, over the years, I realized that as Matt mentioned as well, the more you learn, the more you move up in the space, the more you start, or you start writing less and less code, but making more decisions and helping others kind of push them in the right directions, making sure they're doing the right things while you're making decisions. But in the end, I think all of us still have that little kid in the back who always wants to just write code or like just do something really cool instead of just being in meetings all day. But again, that's just part and parcel of what comes to you. And again, I just want to make sure I mentioned this, that not everyone goes through the same process. There are still people I know to this day, who are straight up computer engineers, software engineers who will just write code all day, no matter what level they are, whether they're like the highest level in the company or second highest level, whatever it is. And there's other people, who go the more management and a blended role where, you write a little bit of code and you also manage teams. Eventually, I helped was one of the developing founders for this website called Rico.net, which is an offshoot from allthingsd.com. Again, these were tech blogs back in the day that used to report on, basically all things tech. Then ended up being purchased by Vox Media, which runs Vox.com, SB Nation, and a whole host of other websites. So I stayed with Vox Media for I think 2.5 years, as long as I needed to stay there before I could move on and do other things. Again, I've always been someone who's always worked from home. I've not ever been someone who's had to go into an office. So there is room for every kind of person in this space. To this day, I think I've never been in office more than maybe 2 times in a week. But again, it's a positive that it gives us the flexibility and the freedom to do that. Once I left Vox Media, I think I was just really burned out from all the years of, starting an agency, doing the client work. A lot of, that work is very painstaking and very time consuming. There's, especially when you're, doing something for yourself, there is no 9-to-5 job. There's really no downtime. There's times when you're working evenings, you're working nights, just because, you're working with companies or employees that are in different time zones in different countries. So you kind of, have to manage that a little bit better. I took some time off, and that's when I, ended up in the crypto space by accident, because again, I had some friends who were, working on a project that needed someone with a little bit of technical experience. And again, a lot of things like Matt mentioned is about self-learning, about evolution, because again, what we went to school for back in 2001 to 2005 and 2006, wasn't really the new it thing, or wasn't really the thing that was being used anymore. The concepts that we learned in college were still really important. Like we learned, some algorithms, how things work, the most optimal way of doing things, and how to, write code, how to think technically, how to think logically. That kind of always sticks with you. So one of the things I remember early on in my career, people used to ask me, it's like, oh, what language do you write code in? And I think that's like one of those things where it doesn't matter, because it's not like, a language you're speaking. As long as you can write code, you can write code in any language. It takes a little bit of time to get used to, how a certain language works, how there's, technically, there's slight differences between languages, but as long as you know how to think technically and how to think logically, you can write code basically in anything. So eventually, in the crypto space, I kind of taught myself, learned some of the languages that are being used there, and ended up building, some products that are being used now. Again, I refrain from mentioning all this because, again, it's one of those industries that not a lot of people like to talk about. But I'm currently working on a startup in the crypto space as well. Happy to answer any questions that might come up later about, startups or some of the challenges we face nowadays. For somebody founding a company, there's, a special set of circumstances that you go through, not just, coming up with something that you're building, validating that it's actually, there's a need for to build that, but also, things like raising funds for that, hiring people, hiring the right people, structure of the team and things like that. So there's always, stuff that's out of my comfort zone personally. But again, as someone, who's always been able to like learn things on my own, I pride myself in doing that. And also finding the right mentors. I think that's one of the really interesting things in this field is there's a lot of people who are willing to spend a lot of time to just talk to you for free, whether they be friends you make through the years, or professors or coworkers over the years. It's a really nice place to be able to network with these guys and get have dinner with someone or have coffee with someone and just sit down and like ask them, what would you do? And it's one of those spaces where I've never actually had someone turn me down. I've never had an issue where like, someone's not given me the information I need. People go out of their way to help each other. So that's one of the beauties of living in the Bay Area. I think that's about all I have for now.
Oh, thank you so much. You've so much experience expands, Pete. Let's switch over to Simon, and he can tell you more about himself and what he does.
Thanks, May. I think Matt and Pete did a really awesome job. So I'm gonna try to keep mine shorter because I know we're trying to get to the part where we answer some questions. So I'm a technical project manager at a consulting firm, CGI, based in New York City. As for my love of computers, I think it really just grew out of the fact that I loved playing video games when I was young. I played a lot to my mother's dismay, to my parents' dismay. I thought I was going to do video games. I thought I was going to build video games for a living. But to be honest, you're never really sure. When I started college, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Quite frankly, I spent my first 2 years at NYU basically trying to figure out what I was going to do. My second or third year, it kind of clicked. I don't think I could point to any one moment in particular, but I decided I wanted to go into the business school, and I wanted to go into information management systems. From there, my life after college, I spent a lot of time in computer consulting industry, building applications to serve the needs of the government sector, Iowa, Westchester, New York. Those some of the places that I've been. I pretty much performed every role on a project team, from being a business analyst, a screen designer, technical project team manager. I've been a COBOL developer, which really dates me, I know. And help desk, production support, which has all really led me to the pinnacle, I guess, where I am now. I'm now a project manager for a team of 40 to 45 consultants working across the country, Texas, Colorado, Virginia, Philly, all towards a common goal of building and developing applications to support the needs of the state of New Jersey and its residents. As a technical project manager, I don't really have an idea when I walk through the doors what it is that I'll spend my time on. I may spend my time trying to figure out what went wrong with an application or what went wrong with a report. I may speak to a client about business requirements all day long. I may work on a technical design of an application. I may work on a technical proposal. I can assure you that I'm almost definitely in some form in a meeting, with the client, one way, shape, or form. I think for me, what I love most about what I do now is that I work on applications that make a difference in the lives of those that live in New Jersey. I help build applications that provide grant funds to residents of New Jersey that experience hardship, whether that's from Hurricane Sandy, whether that's from Hurricane Ida, whether it's from COVID. As far as this conversation, I think the main thing I like to convey to all the high school students out there listening is, I remember that time of uncertainty, not knowing what you wanted to do with your life, and I think mostly don't get discouraged. You may not know what you want to do with your life right away, but just keep learning. Learn something new every day, because over time you'll find out what you're best at and what you love. And if you're doing what you love, you'll most likely be good at what you do, and you will find success. Don't get discouraged if you don't find it right away. It takes time to build up your experience and your skill set, but you'll get there if you keep learning. To be honest, my career has changed over the years. Like I said earlier, I was a COBOL developer. That was one of my first roles when I first started. And I thought I was going to be a COBOL developer for the rest of my life, sitting in the corner and just basically intaking requirements and writing lines of code. But over time, you decide, as you keep learning, your needs, your requirements change. Like what I want to do in my life changed. You keep learning, you keep growing, and you find out what you want to do. If you had told me, I'm not going to say how many years, but many years ago, that I'd be a project manager today, I would have said, there's no way. I don't have the skill set to speak to clients all day, soothe them, gather requirements, build application. I would have said there's no way, shape, or form I'd be fulfilling this role. But here I am, many years later, and it's all a product of staying on track, keep learning, learn something new every day. My track is much different from Pete and Matt. They're far more technical than I am, but it's just still a similar perspective within the industry. Like Pete said, there's plenty of opportunities for roles, different kinds of roles, and you don't necessarily have to be, extremely technical to succeed in this field. So if my experience serves as an example, it's a different perspective. Okay. Hey, I know that we probably want to get to some questions at this point, right? So that's why I end my story.
Okay. Yeah.
I do want to add a couple little things, so if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, I was just going to say, like both the other speakers mentioned, there's so much opportunity for you to move into different jobs, even inside the field, that don't feel discouraged if once you graduate there's like one thing that you're doing and maybe that's not the thing you enjoy doing. Just like Matt, my wife's also a computer engineer. She's worked at the same company since we both graduated at the same time. She's been working at the company for 19 years, but even then, she's not doing the same job every single day. She's like bounced around, done has done a lot of different jobs. So it's one of the things where if all of a sudden you realize you go to school, you learn all this thing, you graduate, and then you're like, oh, I thought this was going to be cool, but I just really don't like writing code here. That's not the end of it. There's even if you're writing code, there's so many things you're making websites, creating apps, autonomous cars, AI. There's like so many different fields that, as long as you're passionate about this, you will find your true meaning and you'll find the true spot where you're meant to be. And the beauty is, it doesn't matter in the end, where we all go to school, like what grades we're in the end, it's all, you stand on what you know and what you can write. One of the most amazing things when you apply for jobs or you look at things, like people look at what you've done or what code you've written, not just where you went to school or what your grade point average was at the time. So it's one of those things where you don't have to be either pigeonholed or stuck in the same spot for the rest of your life.
Good advice. We will open up to Q&A now. So if you have a question for our panelists, you can type in the chat, or you can maybe, if you want to unmute yourself and just say you have a question, and then feel free to ask it. Does anybody want to have a question right now, or otherwise I will start off? Well, one of the first questions I have, because is what is the difference between having a BS in computer science or a BS in information systems?
So, I mean, I don't know, Pete, Matt, you want to start off on that?
Yeah, again, in fact, actually, there's even different. When I went to school, there was, a Bachelor of Engineering and a Bachelor of Arts if you wanted to do computer science and computer engineering. So again, it really depends on what you are focusing on in school. But there's departments or there's schools that have computer engineering in the Department of Engineering where you have to have a really good math background as well as a diverse background in sciences in order to be able to do those things. And that's more I feel like the computer science, computer engineering is more of writing code and learning a lot of that in school, as well as I feel like I may not be able to speak as much on the information system side of things, but I feel like it's a more rounded way and not just like a software engineering code writing track. That's maybe Simon can speak.
So I think from my aspect, I mean, I definitely have I definitely started my my study in college as a CS major, and I found pretty soon that I didn't have the skill set. I didn't want to follow through on the skill set in terms of the CS track. The CS track was a little bit more technical than where I wanted to be. I went to school for management information systems, and to think about it in this way, CS is more of like a deeper dive into like the foundations of computing, like algorithms, data structures. You really have to be really technical, have a good mathematical mind. IS more or less focuses on the application of those technology in business form. So the use of those applications to, let's say, gather information to apply to business decisions, data analytics, systems analysis, project management. That's where I mainly I didn't know this at the time, I would say, but that's what I figured out along the way that I was more suited for. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, Pei, but that's how I see the difference between CS and MIS. So like we've been saying all along, like what Pete and I have been saying, right? There are many different tracks within the industry. You don't necessarily have to be the guy in the corner of the room writing code all day. There are other opportunities within the industry where you can find a place. And in business world, there's definitely a place for information systems.
Yeah, I think I would echo what both the other speakers said. I guess I'm not that directly familiar with information science in particular, but I know that like a lot of the roles will overlap across whichever area you got the degree in. A lot of you'll end up kind of doing pretty similar things. In my current role, I work with a lot of folks who have a data science background, and there I think the focus is more like they're using that more for application of when we're collecting large data sets out of the software systems to be able to analyze those, to be able to write scripts and like do mathematical modeling and produce graphs to be able to better understand patterns in the data. So they're still writing code. It's just kind of in a different context, and it's more of an applied form. And folks who have more of a CS background maybe doing more of the like writing the large scale or the systems that need to be highly performant, and using more of that kind of the underlying knowledge of algorithms or techniques for lower level optimization.
Oh, good answers. I wanted to know, and I'm sure that other students and parents out there probably want to know, for if you go into computer science industry, what kind of skill sets should you have? How much math skills do you need to have? That's always a question they want to know, because in this day and age, a lot of kids are wondering, like, oh, do I need to take calculus? Do I need to take all these advanced math?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, it's I would say the times in my career when I've directly used calculus, there have been a few, but not that often. But I think the thing that's really important is, I think like Pete was saying earlier, is kind of learning how to think about these things, kind of developing the kind of the analytical skills to be able to kind of process information, think technically, think logically, and I think the math really trains you to be able to do that. So I think it was really important to lay that foundation in college. And I think that kind of like shaping your mind to think that way is really important for just like day to day being able to process, being able to understand, like, look at different ways of doing things in code, and just be able to kind of intuitively understand, what's going to be faster than what else. And it's all kind of grounded in that mathematical understanding. And I think there are certain, there are specialized roles within the industry. Like when I was in Android working on the device location estimation, right? There are people who have really deep mathematical knowledge. People have like, PhDs in particular areas where it's, understanding these 4-dimensional quaternion math structures to be able to model like how a device rotates in 3-dimensional space. And then for those sorts of applications, they're, very much using that more advanced mathematical background. But I would say, even for kind of generalist job, it's important to have that, foundation in analytical thinking.
Simon, Pete, do you have anything to add or no?
I think really good job again. A lot of what computer engineers or software engineers do on a daily basis is solving problems. So like Matt mentioned, we don't use calculus, or we don't use some of the things we learn in physics, or being able to solve problems. It's not that we use it directly, but again, once your mind is tuned to the fact on how you think logically, how you think through a problem, that helps a lot. Also, you're able to be able to learn things on your own. Again, we're in an industry that's constantly changing. There's new languages, there's new technologies, there's new things that come up. So it's like one of those things where if you have that strong logical background, you're able to pick things up a lot easier. And also, there are definitely specialized fields where you do need a lot of math. Some of the examples Matt gave also, there's a lot of those things when you're looking in cryptology or cryptography. There's a lot of things where like deep math understanding helps a lot. In fact, it's one of the prerequisites even to be able to do some of those things, provide some of those algorithms.
We had 2 messages come up in the chat. It says, with the emergence of AI, I think demand for software engineers will significantly decrease. And the other one's kind of related to that. It says, how should high schoolers position themselves to face AI challenges?
I think I did crack at some of those questions. I feel like it's one of those things where it would only increase the demand for computer engineers and software engineers in a field that's more dominated by AI. Because again, there's people. AI is not something that you just build once and you forget. Like AI is something that you're constantly training, you're constantly fine-tuning, and also AI has really opened the floodgates right now for people to be able to develop things on top. So if you are keeping up with ChatGPT or some of the other options available right now, some of the really cool things aren't just coming out of OpenAI or some other companies, but what either individual developers or teams are building using that. So we've had these things, like advancements throughout our lives, whether it is, the internet or cell phones, mobile phones with screens and everything come out, like it's just opening up another avenue where, there's going to be more requirement, or there's going to be a more need for software engineers. As long as, you're able to, going back to the same thing, as long as you're able to pick up things and learn things and be able to work with it, you are definitely set in a world that's going to have more AI applications. In fact, there's going to be more, developers and AI users needed in spaces where we don't even use computers as much as we're going to be using in the next few years.
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely agree with that. I think, yeah, AI, I mean, right now it's in such an early stage that there's many directions it could go, and I think no one really knows for sure how exactly it's going to unfold. But I would agree with Pete that like it's opening up new doors in the industry, and there are more things that's like there's so much potential now to integrate AI into more technologies, and I think it is going to increase the demand in that sense. In terms of, I mean, I think maybe part of what may be behind this question is also the sense of like, is AI going to replace a lot of these jobs because it'll be able to do the job of the programmer for them? And I think there are a lot of concerns like that I think are very much overstated. I think it is a very powerful tool. It's kind of maybe compare it to like if you're a theoretical mathematician at the time when like graphing calculators were starting to come out, right? It's a powerful tool that can help with certain tasks in your job. And I think the technology has gotten much better in terms of being able to autocomplete code where, it used to be that it might be able to guess the next line. Now it can, attempt to guess the next paragraph of code that you're going to write, and does a somewhat reasonable job. But I would say, the job of a software engineer is so much more than just like typing the lines of code into the keyboard. Right? A lot of it is kind of figuring out what needs to be written in the first place. And so yeah, I think the AI is a powerful tool, but I wouldn't see it replacing the job of the software engineer.
Yeah, I think the Marvel movies have done a great disservice.
Yeah.
The Jarvis doesn't exist yet. And there isn't just going to be one man that's going to build AI and set it and forget it. We don't have a crystal ball for what's going to happen 5, 10 years, 15 years from now. We know that this is a good industry to get your feet wet and continue. But there's not going to be one person that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So those Pete, Matt, you're more closely aligned with AI in your daily business, but ChatGPT, Bard, or what's Gemini? I think it's called Gemini now, right? The data that's currently within its grasp is 5 years out, right? 3 years out, right? It's not current data, right? They're not working off of current data. Am I right?
Yes and no. There's like a lot of things that are being trained on like stuff that is absolutely happening right now. And again, one of the, I feel like one of the beauties is that I feel like it's really opening up a completely different field that didn't exist previously. It's going to really have a demand for a lot of developers and a lot of engineers. In fact, I've had so much interest in people, inbound of like, hey, just in case you want to get, take a job right now, there's, AI positions open up and down the Bay Area. So, the notion that, that it's going to reduce a demand is, I don't think, I don't see that happening right now. Again, you never say never with this world. But again, I feel like it's really opening up. It's going to be similar to, in my opinion, what having cell phones in everyone's hand did, really opened up a new industry where there's a whole lot of companies that popped up that, none of the social media stuff, none of the app makers, the handheld game makers would have really existed had, Apple and Android not done what they did for the cell phone. So I feel like it's going to be a very similar moment in our industry where it's really going to open up a brand new field where we're going to be building on top of, what the AI tools and stuff that gets built on. There's still people that are training, like you mentioned, models every single day. In fact, people train models for stuff that we haven't even thought about. I feel like it's going to be one of those things where it's we're going to start losing more and more of the the non-skilled jobs, things that are more, easily to replicate, more easily to, document, and still than, someone who's actually building some of these things.
Very well said, guys. A question came up in the chat. Looking back in your careers, what advice would you tell your younger self?
I mean, for me, I think I already said it already. Basically, don't just you may not know exactly what you want to do in your life. Just continue learning, do good things, don't get discouraged. Over time, you're going to build that experience, you're going to build that skill set, and you'll get there eventually. For me, I in this industry, it's hard to stop learning. You're continuously learning. Don't say no, you can't do something. Try and continue learning, because that's the only way you're going to be successful. I'd argue that that's the case in any industry. As a doctor, I'd imagine that there are new techniques, new procedures that they're learning every day. You're consistently having to learn how to, I don't know, perform an operation, or do a certain procedure. I'd argue that in any profession, as long as you keep learning, you will get there eventually.
Matt and Pete, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Simon said really well, just not giving up, and, constantly learning. I think we've all been echoing that. There's times when, we find things that are hard, or things that we're not understanding, or things that are taking longer than we expected. I feel like, especially beginning developers, and I've been guilty of this many times, when you're writing code, like a lot of times it's, wrestling with the code itself, not just the writing code. You write code and it's expected to do something, it doesn't do that, or and not being frustrated by it, but realizing that that's just part and parcel of going through the process. There's times when I remember maybe 10 years ago, I would have like a semicolon in the wrong space, in the wrong spot, and every computer engineer would tell you this. They spend countless hours just because they had like a space that shouldn't be there, or a semicolon that shouldn't be there. But again, and there's a lot of resources out now, especially compared to what it was 10 to 15 years ago. You really can really just copy paste the error you're getting, or the issue you're having, and there's a lot of opportunities for you to learn that way as well.
However, I actually did do quite a lot of programming before, and mistyping and making a typo in the line is the least of your concerns.
Oh, I agree. The tools that exist now, whether they are, good IDEs, or even, like Matt mentioned, there's a lot of, co-pilots and AI tools these days that help you, tell you as you're writing code, whether, you're making a mistake or something. But again, we come from a different time where a lot of these things didn't exist. You were really writing code in a black box where, there weren't anything like that's running at a time. In fact, we used to like write code, then wait for it to compile and then run. It's not like, it is nowadays where you're making, a change and then you see it happening at the same time.
Yeah. So Jasmine, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
I'm finished.
Okay. All right. I think maybe one question of area of interest would be, if you're trying to get into the field right now, these are high school students. Is there particular courses they should be focused on taking? Like if the high school offers some programming language, or outside of the high school, should they be starting to do that now, or will this come later on when they study maybe major in computer science at college or so? And what kind of extracurricular activities? Because I know at Irvington there are some clubs, maybe programming club or so, to get in, that the kids can get involved in. But is that very important down the road?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's very important, but I think it really helps. You know, as Matt mentioned, he was someone who didn't have a lot of experience writing code or doing any of that before he went to college. And look, you know, he's working for one of the top computing companies out there in the world right now, and he's been at the same spot for a long time. So, you know, it kind of proves the point. I came from a different background. I came where I was more into, you know, writing code in high school. There were some classes that were offered. Also, I was doing a lot of my own. There were, you know, competitions back in the days where, you know, you would take part in computer competitions that kind of helped ingrain, you know, critical thinking in my mind. But again, none of that is absolutely necessary. I just feel like, you know, one of the things I'll tell you is you can't go wrong by learning something too early. You know, there are times you can get frustrated, but especially now, there's so many tools available. You know, there's so many sites like you know, whether it's YouTube or other websites will teach you how to code, or just kind of go through the process of, you know, learning things early does not hurt at all. It will only help.
I totally agree with you, Pete. I think if I may go back to my time, there was less of a framework for learning. These days, with the internet, with YouTube, hey, you can learn to do anything on YouTube. And I know back in my day, we used to take opportunities. We used to write letters to companies and ask if there were internships at certain firms. You guys at Google, I mean, like, there's definitely opportunities. I think there are definitely opportunities where they're trying to bring in, and especially if you're a woman too. Women in tech is pretty big right now, so there are plenty of opportunities. A lot of organizations have internships and camps. Some of that is free too. So I would say, you know, reach out to um, companies in the area, or maybe even Google. I mean, I'm sure there are opportunities for summer camps throughout the year. Even at CGI, if you guys are in New York, we have PTech, we have STEM camps in the summer.
Yeah, definitely agree with both speakers. I think, yeah, my story kind of shows that you shouldn't consider these things to be completely, you know, necessary. Like, you shouldn't feel pressure that you know, you have to have a certain level of programming experience going in. But there are just so many good opportunities today, and I think if this is an area that's interests you, you know, I definitely encourage you to go for it. And yeah, there are internships that start very early. I've hosted interns at Google who were in their first or second year of undergrad. So, you know, if you're able to do things offline, kind of, you know, exercise that interest, you know, get some experience, you know, writing simple apps, or just, you know, get your hands dirty with the code, and you know, get familiar with some of the concepts, you know, that definitely can help you to kind of get a head start.
We had a question in the chat that says, computer science is really competitive major. Which one is more important? A, going to a top college with a lead competitive major, or going to an okay college with a competitive major such as computer science?
I feel like it's one of those questions, you know, which I don't think there's one right answer. And I feel like, yes, there's times when people are going for jobs right out of college that there might be a competitive advantage of one over the other. But in the end, if you have had a good, you know, internship in school, or if you've demonstrated that you're doing well, you know, whether it is, you know, writing code, you know, creating an app. There's like kids these days in colleges are building apps. When I was in college, one of our projects we had to do in order to graduate was a senior design project. You know, we had to build a real life project. You know, things like that really help with resumes and landing jobs and stuff. I think I Googled there's something like 100,000 computer science majors or degrees that were awarded back in 2021. So, you know, it's one of those things where there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of competition, but in the end, as long as you know, you can demonstrate that you know what you're doing, you know, whether that is you know, being good at interviews or just being able to write code, create an app, you know, build something, and it doesn't have to be something that's used by a lot of people. It's as long as you can demonstrate, you know, an employer that, hey, I built this, it helps a lot landing jobs. You know, a lot of computing is, again, you know, getting the concepts in college, learning critical thinking and stuff like that. But again, it's, a field that we've all echoed over and over again, where you've constant learning. So as long as you have that ability, it really doesn't matter one versus the other to me. I've hired people, from MIT. I've also hired people who never went to school for computer engineering, who just, learned writing code on their own. And I've had good experiences both ways.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there are many ways in the door. One engineer who I worked with, who was actually one of the lead managers when I was working in social, had actually started at Google in more of like a blue collar role. I think he was working in a call center or something along these lines, and just noticed in that role that there was the opportunity to automate some of what the team was doing. Started writing scripts, managed to kind of parlay that into an engineering job. So I think it's much more about kind of demonstrating the skills, demonstrating the aptitude in the area, as opposed to the name on the degree.
One, I think, resource I'll give is, again, contributing to open source, writing apps, creating things like that. And also, I think a few years ago, I was mentoring a couple of students who were taking part in this program from Google called Google Summer of Code, where they sponsor kids. I think you have to be 18 at the time of application, kind of, when they want to write code or contribute to an open source project. So I think that's a really useful tool. So things like that, as long as you're able to create a profile for yourself, it really doesn't matter how you get your start.
What other majors other than computer science can lead you into the computer science field?
So I think a common one is electrical engineering. That's kind of the closest sibling field. One that I would call out is that I think I mentioned earlier data science, and I think especially this kind of ties back to the question of AI and how that's transforming the industry. I think that's kind of making data science a lot more relevant, because with AI, a lot of what the system is able to do kind of comes from the emergent properties of inside the code, and so a lot of what developers are doing day to day is kind of studying it from the outside. And kind of understanding what it's good at, and I think data science is very relevant for that. And so I see people in those roles kind of doing very similar things to CS. So those would be the main ones that come to mind for me.
Does one need to have background in engineering to go into computer science?
I don't think it's necessary. As long as you're able to meet the prerequisites of the school, get into the program, you don't really need to have anything. I mean, just looking back, all the classes that I had to take as part of the computer engineering major, I could have done without having done some of the background in high school. But I think a lot of it just depends on what the requirements are for the college that you're targeting, for the major you're targeting. That's more important than saying, hey, I need to know this in order to become an engineer. So no, there's not one thing like that.
Okay, I will ask the audience if there's any other more questions for our speakers. Let's see, let me just share screen again. Okay, so if you have any other questions, because we're going to wrap up this session, if you have any other questions for our speakers, here's my email. You can email it to me, and I can probably forward it to the speakers and get a reply going for you. And for all of the different career series that we've had this year, if you have missed any, you can go to our website, the PTSA website, and look up all the video recordings, my PowerPoints on there. And yeah, there's no more. I would like to say thank you to my guest speakers, Pete, Matt, and Simon, for joining us and sharing a lot about information about computer science, which I've learned a lot too. And thank you to the participants who've also joined us. And I hope everybody has a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck. Thanks, Pei.
Yes, thank you for joining from New York. It's late over there.
No worries.
All right.
Have a
Bye.
good night, guys.